To be spoken here on the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy, episode 6. We, of course, are broadcasting from the Blue Chew Studios. Try Blue Chew free when you use our promo code Hardy at checkout. Just pay $5 shipping. I, of course, am Jon Alba, joined, as always, by the man of the hour, the connoisseur of the AHFO. I got to be very careful getting that in there, Mr. Hardy. He's Matt Hardy. What's going on, my man? How are you?
I am well, John. How are you today?
I'm well, very tired. So we were supposed to do Big Money Matt this week. We talked about that last week on the podcast, but I had what we call Matt Hardy travel this past week. And I was in 12 states in a matter of 4 days and just getting all the pieces together, just a little too much. So we're going to do that next week with some surprises as well. And we decided we're going to do Ask Matt Anything this week.
Yeah, that works out well. And like you said, whenever you do have those travel scenarios, they are not wonderful.
They are not. Well, I'm not traveling with Michael Hayes, so that probably makes things a little easier on me.
Yeah.
No rest stops, no leaping off of hotel radiators. None of that, man. Everything's all good on this end. How's everything in North Carolina? The weather holding up? The house Hardy keeping somewhat peaceful this week?
Yeah, everything is okay. No complaints. You know, a little bit of a rainy day here, but we seem to be okay. Light rain.
That's good. I like to hear that, man. We had a lot of fun talking about Omega last week. I had so many people message me and say, I didn't realize, I didn't know. And I think that was the coolest thing about that episode.
Yeah, I think so too. Because there's never been a long form actual career story about Omega, like from the inception of it all the way up to like when myself and my brother left. There's never been like a long form story told. There's been some documentaries here and there that have like kind of hit the hot spots, but I mean, we went into quite a good depth on it, and I heard that as well. Like, oh my god, I had no idea someone like held your ring hostage and you guys had to come up with these funds, or I had no idea about Manny Fernandez showing up and you almost having to fight this guy when you were at such a young age. So that was very cool that a lot of people were like, wow, that was eye-opening.
What was the feedback among members of the Omega crew?
They all love it. And just like the way you described it, I think like a love letter to independent wrestling, or a love letter to a bunch of independent wrestlers showing how passionate they are about their craft. It's a great way to describe it. And I feel like that's how it came off. Everybody was really, in their feelings. Everyone was sentimental after listening to it, because it brings back such great memories. Even thinking back in hindsight, it was, even though we weren't making money and we were like struggling to like keep things together from a financial standpoint, it was some of the best times of our career. They were so special, and we cherish those moments and hold them all very dear to our heart, I think.
100% on that. It was a really great episode. You can check out in the archive right now. Just search The Extreme Life of Matt Hardy wherever you get your podcast, or Matt Hardy Brand on YouTube. We got a link in our little bio on social media as well that you can all head to. And we got a link as well for Box of Gimmicks. Check out, get that Extreme Life of Matt Hardy swag. People were talking all about the sweater this past week. It got a little nippy in some parts of the country, so you get your long sweaters. Coffee mugs. I saw there was a tweet from our social media extraordinaire, Dominic D'Angelo, talking about delightful coffee. So definitely get your eyes and ears on all that, my friends. All right, Matt, let's have some fun here. Nice, easy episode. Ask Matt anything. But before we answer any questions, hit us with Matt Fact number 6.
Matt Fact: Matt is a creature of ritual.
Anything specific to that?
I really am. I am someone who likes being in a routine. I kind of like having some sort of structure, and I don't necessarily believe in like luck or karma. although I've said this time and time again, if karma's a real thing, I'm okay with it. But I do believe in like, doing what's right and like having some sort of structure in your life. I feel like that makes your life go by a little easier. And it's also more, you're able to stay on top of things a lot more. So I really am a creature of ritual. Like there's so many things I do that are like traditions and routines, and I just do them regularly over and over and over again. I am, I am not an orthodox cat. I am definitely a creature of ritual.
Well, the ritual that all you guys want to get in the habit of is heading over and leaving us that 5-star review and leaving us
Yes.
all that great feedback. Jose, now is Jose your, like, using the transitive property, your assistant now with the
Yes,
show?
well, Andrade calls him his assistant. I call him my minion.
Yes. Okay.
No, he is definitely my assistant. He is my assistant as well. I'm a big fan of Jose. It's been fun getting to know him a little bit. One of the most funny things about this is that he was talking about, whenever they were talking about the origins of his character and his television persona, they were thinking about making him, because he speaks English and Spanish both flawlessly. And he was helping Andrade out a lot, because Andrade obviously has been learning English ever since he, came to WWE, and now working with AEW since he'd been in the States. So he's working very hard on English, and his English has improved so much more than when he first started. So Jose was his friend, and he was going to help him with all the translations and everything. And originally, I think Andrade wanted him to have like a very white name, like he was very much a English speaking white American. Yes, right. And it's so funny because before they even technically named him, they just called him Jose, which was like his shoot name. I didn't even figure it was. I figured that was like a word name, but they called him by his, legal shoot government name, Jose. So he's a good cat, and I've enjoyed working with him.
Well, he put us over big, so you can make like Jose and leave us that review. It's very much appreciated. Let's get into some questions here. So many from all the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy faithfuls. Thank you very much. We asked you to hashtag Ask Matt, and let's get to it. Our first question. This is a really good one. Latasha asks, do you regret not having a match against Roman Reigns or you and your brother against the New Day? So obviously referring to your most recent WWE run here.
Yes, I really would have loved to have had a match against Roman Reigns. I like Roman Reigns immensely as a performer, and I also really like him just as a human being too, as well. We always get along good. He's just a real cool cat, and he's such a hard worker. He's so smooth. He's so handsome. He's so charismatic, and he really does have an amazing package. And the stuff he's doing currently with him and the Usos, I mean, I can't put that over enough. It is, my favorite thing on WWE television, and he's killing it. And it just, to me, I'm almost disappointed it took them so long to actually step out and turn him heel, and it became such a huge success. Like, that's sometimes you have to do that. If the crowd isn't reacting to what you give them in a certain way, there's always one of the things that's nice about pro wrestling is that you can, flop someone to being a bad guy or a good guy. And that was a step they needed to do with Roman, because the crowd was just so split on him. And I feel like whenever you do that, and the fans that do doubt him or maybe boo him, whenever they actually start cheering Roman because he's a heel and he's doing like this cool stick that they love now, then you ultimately build him back into a much bigger babyface at the end of the day. So I love the work he's been doing, and I would have loved to have had a match with him. That would have been a lot of fun.
I'm so glad you said that, because I know that you knew I was going to follow up and ask about all that. And I was going to, because it's like 98, 99 with The Rock, right? Like they turned Rock heel. Yes. Because you knew at the end of the day, he was going to get so damn over because of how charismatic he was and how good looking he was and all that, that he's going to be a big time babyface. And I was at that Royal Rumble in 2015 when the crowd just absolutely mutilated he and Rock. And I think you're right. You sometimes just have to recognize that we got to listen to the fans. Did you find any frustration with that throughout your run, either in WWE or in wrestling in general, that the powers that be are so resistant to what the fans are calling for at times?
I'm sure I have. One thing that was cool about, like, once we came back and did Broken Matt Hardy, it was during the pandemic, and we were kind of, once again, as I've said this, and this is a real thing, I can tell you from like experience being in the ring and like seeing the feedback. The WWE audience is a much more casual fan, a much older audience, a much easier going and much more acceptable of different things. The AEW audience is very, very tough. They're a younger audience. They're more of like the younger woke crowd, I guess you could even say as such. They're much harder to please than like a WWE audience. And once the Broken Matt Hardy thing was once it was happening, and then once we weren't playing to live fans in there, and it was one of those things that the people didn't really accept it or embrace it. Once I said, like, I need to turn, and I need to be a bad guy because, people aren't into what I'm doing currently. I said, and this will work, where I can piss them off as a heel. It'll be much easier. And like Tony Khan was immediately up for it. And he knew that, and he felt that immediately, and he was down for it. And he knew Big Money Matt was like the way to go. So that was super easy. So I can say, speaking with Tony, he was very much on the pulse of what people were doing, and he agreed with it as well. And we went into that. That's where I kind of created the whole idea behind, being Big Money Matt and taking a wee fee from Private Party, because I was already starting to mentor them a little bit. And then it was just a great scenario where I could take advantage of them at that point in time.
Well, we will get to that next week. I promise you that here on the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy. Now, what about the New Day? That was the second part of that question. That seems like a natural matchup that I guess just never really happened.
Yeah. We were kind of, during our final run there in WWE, the 3 years I was there, obviously I was healthy the whole while. I was never out or hurt, fortunately. My brother actually had his first real run of injuries. So he was out for 17 or 18 months during that time, during those 36 months we had there. So we didn't get to do the tag team work we would have liked to have done. But the New Day is definitely a team that we wanted to work against, because I got to reference them several times when I was doing Broken Matt Hardy and TNA Impact. They were the Day of New, and I kept making references to those guys and calling them out and saying, it was our mission. We had been sent from a higher power. We have to prove that we are the greatest tag team in all of space and time. So that is a match that was definitely on our to-do list that we wanted to get and have. And unfortunately, we didn't get to have it then. But yeah, I would have loved to have had that match. And once again, Kofi is a guy I've known for a long time, got a lot of love and respect for him. And too, I love how he's such a great family man now and has all his kids. And we always had that in common. Woods is someone I like a lot too. We're in this cool text group where we stay in contact quite a bit. And Big E, I just kind of got to know him, during this last run, at WWE. So that was a lot of fun too. He's just a great guy. And I'm so happy that he has been as successful as he has been the last little while. But, I guess it's pro wrestling, and who knows, never say never. Maybe one day we'll get a Hardys or a New Day match, but it is a match we would definitely like to have at some point in our careers.
I'm going to ask you a question that might be a little controversial, but I think it's worth asking. Are the New Day, or is the New Day, in Freebird territory in terms of iconic wrestling trios? Because I believe they are.
Yeah, I mean, they would have to be. And especially, I mean, I have to say this, for them to have this kind of run, this longevity in WWE is pretty unprecedented, because that just doesn't happen. WWE, they don't do like long-term, factions or units. And for the New Day to be
like tag teams, he doesn't like tag teams these days.
But I know that I'm sure they have fought tooth and nail to stick together, and it's great that they have. So they definitely have. They are definitely hovering around that Freebird type legacy as far as being a great 3-man team.
No doubt about it. Let's move on here. Ken asks, would you ever do anything in your Broken character with Danhausen? I'd assume as a team. I saw your interview with him and it was amazing. I believe you called him Santiago. Man, big time debut with Danhausen. He is over like Rover right now. What are your thoughts?
Yes, he had reached out to me. I started following him on social media, almost very similar to how, we first interacted, John. And he had asked me, he had an interview show he was doing that was on his website, whatever. And he's very, very good at self-promotion. And he's done a great job of keeping his character relevant, whether he was working at a major company or getting a lot of limelight for wherever he was employed or getting paid from. And he's done a good job at doing that. And I did that with him. And because I was doing Big Money Matt at the time, I pitched the idea to him. I said, I think I should almost start like his Big Money Matt, and then maybe we can do a transformation into Broken Matt Hardy, which I still dig that deal too, kind of the shifting personas. And we did that. It was a lot of fun. I'm pretty sure I called his essence, where the essence currently in Broken Matt Hardy is Damascus. I read his essence, and it was Santiago. That was the name of Danhausen's essence. So that was a lot of fun. And I actually have this idea, like, obviously, as everyone knows, I have 4 young children under 6 years old, and because we'd been so busy and so hectic, once we get to the point where our daughter is a little older and she's not such an issue where we have to take care of her like every single hour of the day, I want to start doing a thing where I do Broken Matt Hardy, like a short series. And Broken Matt Hardy does things here on the Hardy compound. And especially now that, my brother Jeff is free and he can be involved in it, and brother Nero. But we do, like these 20-minute episodes, maybe do one every couple of weeks. And it's the Broken Universe still lives on. And it's a great place because there is a huge fan base out there for that. And AEW isn't necessarily the right avenue for it. But if I could do these broadcasts, I'd actually spoken to Danhausen about it. I was, tempted to, fly him here. I'd fly brother first class, come on down to the Hardy compound. We'll shoot a super entertaining episode of the Broken Universe and interject Danhausen in it. And that still might be something that will happen down the road. But I am definitely wanting to do something with Broken Matt Hardy where you still see him interact with members of the pro wrestling community for sure here on the Hardy compound.
He's a great guy. Can't put him over enough. He's someone who has created his own opportunities 100% of the way. And
he really has. He's done an incredible job of it.
He's really awesome. And I'll tell you what, he had the run of Ring of Honor. I would have killed to have seen your Ring of Honor character with his, because you would have been the anti Danhausen, and it would have been a lot of fun to see that sort of interaction as well. Good stuff there. Big Danhausen fan here. Let's see. A wrestling historian asks, how did it feel to become TNA World Heavyweight Champion? We around the 11th anniversary of you joining TNA for the first time. So eventually you became champion a few years later. What are your thoughts on that?
It's always an honor whenever you get the opportunity to serve as a promotions champion. And TNA was in a very weird spot at that time. Anyway, that's when they were having a lot of issues and trouble with their network, and just they were kind of struggling to keep their television rights, if I'm not mistaken. And I'll tell you how this kind of all materialized with a little bit of backstory. So they knew they were going to have to switch channels when we were on. Do you even remember what the name of the channel was?
They went Spike to Destination America.
Destination America.
To Pop TV after.
Yes. Destination America is what I couldn't recollect. So we were on Destination America, and they knew the Destination America gig was going to be up, and they had worked, and they ended up securing a Pop TV slot, right? So they didn't know if they were going to lose that television in like 6 weeks, or they didn't know if it was going to last through the end of the year. So over the course of a few days, we did this huge tournament, which was like, I don't remember the specific name for it, but it was basically to determine a new world champion, because we did a deal where I won the world championship, and then they weren't sure how much TV they were going to have. EC3 filed an injunction to me, and then I was like, I had to forfeit the championship, and then we're going to have this huge tournament. And then the way it worked out is they did get TV pretty much through the end of the year. And myself and EC3, we fought through the whole tournament. It was so many matches over the course of just a few days we did. And then it came back down to us ultimately in the very finals. And then EC3 won it back. And then when we had a rematch a couple weeks later, we did a deal where I had said, if I don't beat EC3, I'll go home and retire. And this is where we did the big double turn, where Big Money Matt started in TNA, and then I won the championship, and that's where Rebby and Maxwell became television characters as well. And I stole Tyrus from EC3, and then I stole his best friend from him. And my whole goal was to ultimately destroy EC3's life, because we'd been in a rivalry before that. Like, I'll tell you how that all started too. My brother Jeff, we'd won the tag team titles, and then he had broke his leg from racing his motorcycle. Erratic behavior. I think that's going to be a term I'm going to constantly use talking about Jeff going forward. He was just, committing some of his erratic behavior. He was out doing his motocross track, which he built like a legit motocross track here on the Hardy compound at his house. And he was jumping like a 100-foot far ramp, that
he's a stunt man.
Yeah, well, that's what he is. He's a living, breathing stunt man more than a wrestler. But he was doing this. He ended up breaking his leg. And this erratic behavior caused us to have to forfeit the titles, because he had to go have emergency surgery on his leg, and he had all kinds of problems from it. That's ultimately why he had to have knee surgery as well, because they didn't catch it when it first happened. So I was kind of like on my own now. We had plans going forward to do all this stuff as the Hardy Boys together as a team. And I remember telling John Gabrick, I was like, hey, now that EC3 has become the world heavyweight champion. Why don't you let me work against him, and I can like help elevate him a little bit and build him? You know, maybe we'll have a match and we can make like a controversial finish and ending, and then we can build to a ladder match, and then he can beat Matt Hardy, you know, a guy who's, you know, known as being a legend in ladder matches. In a ladder match, I think it'll help elevate him, because I still am a big fan of EC3. I dig his work, and I enjoyed working with him a lot. So that's how that all started. And then we got such good feedback on this, and they knew their TV deal was coming to an end. And the decision at the very end, John Gabrick said, we're going to do this deal where we have you beat EC3 in this 3-way match. We're in North Carolina, so it should get a good reaction because we're in your home state. Whatever, you can win it. We'll have him take it from you, and then we'll set up this big tournament. And just depending on how much television we get, we can either fill the television because we'll have content, or if we don't get it, then once we start Pop TV, we'll go right back to your issue. And that's how that all started. But that was ultimately what led into Big Money Matt coming, because I wanted to be a heel at that time too. Much like I said with the AEW thing, I saw that like just being regular Matt Hardy, the version of Matt Hardy, one half of the Hardy Boys that I was doing at the time, it was watered down, and it was just, there was no buzz around it. So you always have to change into something that has buzz. Obviously, you have to, you know, keep yourself fresh with the audience. And I wanted to do that. And John Gabrick was sold on it too. So he was definitely up for doing it. And we did it in that double turn. And I still think that is one of the most underrated double turn matches there's ever been in history. It was so good. And the way the reaction changed from the beginning of the match to the end of the match about who was getting cheered, who was getting booed, and the amount of heat in the match, I was super happy with that. And I feel like it is very underrated because TNA wasn't getting a lot of love at that time, but that match really stands out as being a great double turn.
Well, that's the Cliff Notes version, because in the next month, we are going to take a deep dive into all of that stuff with EC3. And eventually, because that all leads to the broken character, into the WrestleMania 33 return. It's all very coherent and cohesive. So
it really is like one flawless story. It's pretty amazing.
It's really cool. We'll get into that more in depth, but I want to stick with TNA here. Mike asks, do you ever think about what would have happened in your career had you signed with TNA in 2005 as opposed to going back to WWE? So this is right before the big Edge angle. You were gone from the company. TNA at the time was starting to get some buzz and chatter. I think it's important to put that into perspective here. They were coming off the Fox Sports run, transitioning over to Spike TV after that. TNA is a viable number 2 here at this point. Did you ever think about going there? Did they ever reach out to you?
Oh yeah, no. I mean, maybe sometime down the road we could have a conversation with myself and Jeff Jarrett, because we talked many times there. And I was 100% interested. I'd never committed to them. Once I do commit, I try and always hold my word. That's something that's very important. You know, it's almost like one of the things that hurt the Good Brothers, you know, because they had committed to, you know, going to AEW, you know, once their deals were done. And then WWE, once AEW became a threat, they kept offering them more money. And then like they accepted this money that they felt like they couldn't turn down. But then once the pandemic happened, they were just scrapped, you know, so it's very tough. And one other thing about pro wrestling that people have to remember as well, when they talk about like what people should do with their career, you still have to remember at the end of the day, you know, even though we love this and you want to do what's best for you, where you think you're going to be taken care of the best and also treated the best, it's still a job, and you have to go where the money is too. You know, you can't forget that. Like there's some people to say like, well, you know, I could work at McDonald's or I could work at this other restaurant where I would make 3 times the money. And if you ask someone, which restaurant are you going to work at? They're obviously going to go to the place where you can make 3 times the money, even though if it's going to be a more difficult job, or, you know, you might not get treated as well, whatever, people are going to go where they make the most amount of money, you know, in the same amount of time. So that's kind of what ultimately ended up happening in that situation. It's so crazy. I got fired, you know, a few weeks earlier. And then I came back with a raise, with a pretty damn good raise, almost making double the money I did, because I like got so hot at the end of the day, you know. And that's almost like when social media had started, and I was kind of on the pulse of that. And there were people that like felt for me and they got behind me, which was, I've always greatly appreciated. And I always do, even the times where I've been a heel and I've done whatever I say to shit on the fans, I always appreciate the fans, because I know that at the end of the day, you know, they're the ones that are a huge portion of my success, along with my hard work, because they support me and they dig what I'm doing. So I mean, I guess I've always thought, I'm not a big what ifer, but, you know, I've always thought like, how would it have been if I did end up there? I don't know. I mean, I just knew if I would have came back, you know, if I did come back to W at the time and work with Edge and we were all cool, everybody was on the same page, all parties involved. I knew that it would be a super hot issue. And I knew WWE would probably get revenge on me because they're going to be upset that I rocked the boat and forced their hand and made them hire me back. But that's okay. I was going to be making more money and hopefully I could work myself into a better spot. So I guess I have thought what would have happened if I went there, but like not very much, because like I'm one of those guys, like once I make a decision, I'm all in.
Well, you worked yourself into a pretty high caliber match at SummerSlam 2005, and that's where our next question comes from, Dalton. I have always wanted to know if the finish of your SummerSlam 2005 match with Edge was a work or a shoot. I feel like someone bleeding out and losing via ref stoppage in their revenge match was a horrible booking decision for someone who, in all caps, will not die. So set the record straight, Matt fact or Matt fiction, it's a shoot.
That was first and foremost, John. That was a hell of a segue. That was a great way to intertwine those two questions. Good stuff. Yeah. And let me ask you, John, do you think it was a work or shoot?
I'd have to go back and watch it. I remember Bruce Pritchard talked about it on his podcast when he did the episode on that whole feud. And I'm trying to remember what he said. I think that it was a work, but I'm curious. Let's hear it.
Yeah, I mean, everything in that match went exactly how it was supposed to go. And just to the individual who asked that question and said they thought it was a terrible booking idea. I mean, I don't feel like it's as bad of a booking idea, considering that I wouldn't stop fighting. True. And I was bleeding and the ref stopped it. I mean, as opposed to like if I gave up and if I quit or if I just got beat straight out, that would have been a much worse booking decision. So the whole idea behind this was that we were going to go out and almost have like a UFC MMA fight, incorporate some pro wrestling into it, but it was supposed to be short, like go, like a fisticuffs, very violent, very much fighting. And then I was going to pick a spot where I was going to end up bleeding profusely, and the referee was going to stop the match. And I came up with the scenario that we ended up doing, and got good color in there too, brother. So that came out all right. And it was just the way it was going to go, because basically we knew we were going to continue that story and go back and forth because we wanted to drag this out for a few months because we had such a hot issue that so many people were invested in. We didn't want to give away too much there. Obviously, the good guy who you want to see overcome all the odds can't overcome the bad guy on night one and then continue the issue, because then he's kind of got his revenge, so he had to drag it out a little bit. And like looking back in hindsight, I feel like it was still done pretty well, because we had that match where it just got stopped because of my bleeding. Then there was the no contest in the street fight, which that was I love that match a lot. I was a big fan of that match. Both Adam and I like that match. And then the cage match is one of my favorite matches in my career, which I think you could segue into another thing, another question we have, if I'm not mistaken. And then ultimately we finished it because they wanted to split us and put us on different brands, and then Edge ended up getting one up on me at the very end. And I figured at the end of the day, I knew, because I made WWE hire me back, for a raise, making almost double the money. I knew that they were going to get theirs in the end. So it was all good. I mean, it was, in hindsight, it was a pretty good program.
A little TV trick for anyone who wants to be a producer out there is you want to start with something big and you flow to it. You connect the dots in between things. So Matt just put on his TV producer hat, and we get our question from Graham. What went through your head before pulling off an avalanche leg drop onto Edge from the top of a steel cage? And do you think that's your most extreme moment?
It is definitely one of my most extreme moments. I mean, there's a few things that I've done that have been pretty crazy. I mean, the first couple things that pop in my mind are that leg drop off the top of the cage, especially because a leg drop in its own, just doing a regular leg drop is a painful move. So doing it off a super elevated platform in the top of a steel cage is obviously extreme. I think about when myself and Bubba Ray Dudley went through the four tables. Yeah, because that was one of those things. If one of us went early, then the other guy was done. It could have been terrible. And then also when I went over backwards off the top of a 12-foot ladder, over the top rope, to the floor, through tables in TLC 1. I mean, those are the first couple of things that pop in my mind. But I mean, I've done a ton of dumb shit throughout my career, and fortunately I'm still here and still half-ass healthy, so to say. But doing that leg drop was an extreme thing. And I couldn't remember in WWE someone that had done a leg drop off the top of the cage. So I knew I'd be kind of like breaking new ground, with that. And then it was a great way to close out this feud. It was such a big deal to finally get my win. Didn't necessarily close out the feud, but I got my win, my clean pinfall win over my enemy at that time, and overcame all the odds. So just doing that in front of that crowd, and the crowd was so hype. And I remember doing it and like not being afraid, not fearless. I literally felt fearless when I did it. And I remember coming back through the curtain and having IRS and the $1 Million Man asked me, said, "Oh my God, I can't believe that. How do you feel?" I said, "I feel great now, but adrenaline's pumping. Ask me tomorrow." Ask me tomorrow after I get up a couple hours into my day, and then I'll be able to give you an honest assessment. And that really was that. My lower back and hips were already pretty messed up from doing leg drops at that point for, Jesus, almost 13 years. Legitimately, I've been doing leg drops off the top and second, whatever, and working that heavy WWE schedule. Whenever myself and my brother first started with WWE, when we were doing 10 days on and 4 days off, every night we were doing that leg drop splash off the top into that hard ass ring. So that was a lot of wear and tear, obviously. And that was the moment where I said, "Oh, I've got to alter this a little bit. I can't do this leg drop all the time. I can do it time to time, but I can't do it every night like I used to when I was younger." And that's when I ended up changing it to ho and do an elbow where I would jump off the second rope to the back of the guy's neck. And it's the most, it's so funny when I tell guys this, if we're ever working in a match, whatever, said, "Okay, then I'll hit you with the most exciting yet boring move in the history of pro wrestling, in the history of pro wrestling," because that's what it is. We still do the whole mannerism, oh, get the crowd hype, and then we'll jump off and I elbow them to the back of the neck and protect my body.
Always got to look after yourself. I'm not sure how in depth we're going to get with that Edge feud anytime soon here on the podcast. So since we're talking about it, I want to ask you this. You just rattled off that series of matches that you had with him. What was your working relationship like with him at that time, as you have the ref stoppage at SummerSlam and you do more matches after that? Were you guys at a point where you could successfully pull off a feud professionally, the personal men's, anything on that?
Yes. Front? Yeah. We were on great terms at that time.
That's great. So, I mean, it came across in your work too, because the realism through all that was just exceptional. So,
well, I mean, if you look back at all the stuff we did to one another, I mean, obviously there was a huge amount of trust involved, and then obviously everyone, did the right thing because everybody got through that healthy.
Absolutely, they did, and both of you went in your respective ways. Here's a fun question from Ken: ham or turkey?
Turkey, without a doubt.
No mustard.
Turkey is just so much more healthy overall.
Very true.
Ham is okay, but even like as far as a taste, besides just nutritional value, I'll go with turkey.
Is Rebby the chef of the house, Hardy, or do you cook?
Yeah, she is definitely. She is the chef. Senior Benjamin is he's a hell of a chef as well. He can cook. He can cook up some mean Puerto Rican food and Hispanic food, but she is the cook, and she is quite an excellent cook as well.
I like that. That's good stuff there. That's always a perk when you marry someone who can cook. No doubt about
yes.
That. Let's see here. Lindsay asks, do you ever see yourself opening a wrestling school?
I could definitely see myself opening a wrestling school. I'll be honest with you. When I first built the Dome of Deletion, a 6,000 square foot building in my backyard, my mentality is that I should have a wrestling ring because I've, attained so much success because of professional wrestling. So my first original thought when I build this, I said, well, I'll have this. It'll be a ring where I can work out in. If I have people that need to come work out, they can. I said, maybe one day I'll have a wrestling school here. And then later, as time went on, I was like, hold up, having kids and being married and a family, like, no, I don't want this to be a place where people I don't know end up coming and visiting, in a wrestling school. So I wouldn't have a wrestling school here in the Dome of Deletion, even though that was one of my early mindsets when as silly and young and single Matt Hardy was building that structure. But no, I would love to have a wrestling school. I think it would be fun. I enjoy training people. I enjoy teaching. I enjoy seeing people grow as performers and just as pro wrestlers. I love this genre obviously so much, and it's such a unique skill of being an entertainer and a teller. So it's something I enjoy doing, and in that way, I still, if I'm not able to wrestle and take bumps as an active in-ring competitor, it still allows me to have a role in ring stuff. So I would definitely be up for having a training school, and I would enjoy being a trainer.
That's why I knew you'd be great for this podcast, because you'd have a lot to offer people. And I have not been disappointed on that front yet, and I don't anticipate that I will be. Let's see here. We got Misty. I know you're going to like this question. We all know your love for Dexter and Breaking Bad, among others. Is there any other shows or characters that you're currently into?
Yeah, I'm a big TV show, series, television. I love that. Currently, I am watching the fourth and final season of Ozark. Big fan of Ozark. Some other stuff that I watched after that I really got into was Blacklist. I enjoyed their stuff a lot. True Blood, Justified. I've enjoyed Better Call Saul, obviously, which is the prequel to Breaking Bad. Your Honor, just recently with Bryan Cranston. I enjoy Bryan Cranston's work, obviously, from the Breaking Bad stuff and Heisenberg and Walter White. But yeah, TV shows are, there's a lot of inspiration, I find, for different characters and ideas in pro wrestling from television shows. I think where you can see some sort of specific trait about a character, or maybe the way he says something, and there's always, you can kind of incorporate it into what you're doing, especially if something fits in the right context. So I enjoy those things. Most recent show though is Ozark that I'm watching. I've heard a lot about Yellowstone. I know Yellowstone has a lot of love for it out there. So I'm gonna start watching that pretty soon.
There was a chance to spin off of this. It was funny. I was going through our Ask Matt. I searched Ask Matt on Twitter, and I guess someone else did an Ask Matt, and it wasn't for our podcast, but it was a good question that I want to know the answer to. So JC Bells tweeted Iron Man or Captain America, because I think that's a nice little spinoff. You've talked about how you loved comic books growing up and all that stuff. So Iron Man or Captain America?
Yeah. And I'll say this: if I did it before I watched the Marvel Comics Universe cinematic stuff, I would have probably said Captain America. But Tony Stark with Robert Downey Jr. is just so good. It's Iron Man. I mean, he's the best. It's definitely Iron Man. I've enjoyed his stuff so much. He was just excellent in the role, and he just made Iron Man such enjoyable, likable character, and his whole story arc in Marvel Universe. Like they may change it, like it could change times or universes or planes or dimensions or whatever, but the stuff that he did, leading through to his finale was all so good, so good. And also, I even want to throw this in on the last deal. Like I went back and watched The Sopranos, which I heard people rant and rave about for years and years and years, and I absolutely did love it. The Sopranos stuff was so good. And I watched The Shield too, which is The Shield and The Wire, which are two shows that I missed because I was working nonstop back in the day. So I also caught up with those shows. They're both excellent also.
Ever watch Curb Your Enthusiasm?
I haven't. I know it's good stuff. And I feel like I'm more of a drama person, as opposed to like a comedy or just fun kind of skit show, whatever it may be. But I'm up for watching anything. What's that?
This show's up your alley. I have no doubt you would fall in love with it. So
yeah, I'll have to check it out. I'll put it on my list.
Yeah, man. Tony Stark's the man. Robert Downey Jr. is the man. I feel like if Big Money Matt were a babyface, it's Tony Stark, and that's the way to approach that. Just an idea to think about. One of our ad-free show's top guys, James, asked, after the Orlando Mania return, how did you feel backstage after a huge pop on the entrance and winning the titles? I will forever remember that moment. Great show. I love listening to you and Alba. Mad love for Odom too. Great podcast. Now, I don't want you to go too in depth here because, spoiler alert, we're going to be doing a WrestleMania 33 episode in about a month and a half or so. But give us a little tease here. This is an iconic WrestleMania moment when the emotions are coming down a little bit backstage. How does it feel?
Probably the most rewarding thing after that match is that we got through it. Everything was successful. We got an amazing reaction. But it was just nice that it was over, that we no longer had to hold that secret. And now for my brother, it was killing him. Me, not as much, but it was nice just to to get through all that and still have it remain somewhat of a secret, and it didn't get out there. It wasn't hugely leaked. There was no confirmation about it, and we kind of pulled it off. So that was the most rewarding thing. And it was also, there were so many people that worked for WWE that we were like legitimate friends with, or people we stayed in such close contact with, and they were so surprised and shocked. It was just so great to see all those guys again, you know. And there were a lot of guys that obviously, you know, gave us a lot of made up hokey drama about not letting them know we were coming back like that. Like, why would you do that and surprise us?
Oh man, Matt, I was there for that, and when we talk about in long form, it was a very special moment, and I can't wait to share that with you.
Yes.
Let's keep going here. We've got a question from Joseph. You said Macho Man was your favorite wrestler growing up. Did you ever get to cross paths with him?
I did. Whenever we were working as extras in WWE, I got to have a couple interactions with him, just very short, small conversation, and just, you know, introduce myself and meet him, which was cool in the big scheme of things. It's always nice to meet guys you idolized when you were growing up. So it's cool that I got to do that.
Is that where you get the elbow drop from, now that you're doing that?
That is why that when I was doing the elbow drop is high voltage, and whenever I would do it later on in my career, it stemmed from Macho Man originally.
Well, Lance asks, is Matt jealous that Jeff got to work with Randy Savage in TNA back in 2004?
Yeah, I am not gonna lie. I was a little jealous. I was definitely envious that Jeff got to wrestle with him. I thought that was super cool, because I would have loved to have done that, to be, you know, involved, you know, in a segment with him, or in a match, you know, to work against him or be his partner, whatever it may be. It was so cool that we got to do that with like Shawn Michaels, which was a guy who was a big inspiration for myself and Jeff. That was a lot of fun. But yeah, Macho Man being my guy, you know, in the beginning, I was quite envious Jeff got to work with him in TNA.
Very short run Macho Man had there in TNA, and Jeff Hardy,
yes,
he was part of that. So that's pretty cool. Great question from Ringside Rant. We've heard throughout the history the term ring general. In regards to singles wrestlers, that's typically where you hear it. Being the tag team generals that you and your brother were/are, who do you see currently, and also from the past, that could be considered tag team ring generals?
That is a great question. When I think about back in my day, when I think back a little bit.
That was your JBL impression, came out there a little bit.
I don't know.
When the Hardy Boys turn on Michael Hayes, they will kill him.
When the Hardy Boys turn on Michael Hayes, they will kill him. You have to put that nice Texas drawl in there. I feel like that was a little more Jack Lanza, you know, like the old timer who's the, you know, producer at that point, whatever, who's the age, you know. Jack Lanza was, he'd be smoking back in my day, you know, and then they go to tell you some horseshit story about how things were so much better back then. Like I do to the young guys now.
Who are the tag team ring generals there? For me, I would, and I've never worked with them, obviously, but I think Edge and Christian are probably right up there.
Without a doubt. I mean, you know, if you look back in that era, I don't think a ton of people that were, you know, really involved on the scene. I don't think they would say Jeff, because I was kind of the guy that would put shit together. Jeff would go out there and be the rock star, but Edge and Christian, they both would. And then Bubba from the Dudleys, Bubba was the guy that was kind of the tag team general in their matches in that scenario. And then like current day stuff, like Matt Jackson, and Nick Jackson is really good too, but Matt Jackson is really, really good at like structuring tag team matches. Both of the FTR guys are really good. They're really smart in what they do. I think that the Briscoes are really smart, like especially Jay, like from a perspective of like knowing what he is and structuring a match around what they do and kind of what their persona is. I think they're real good with that too. I feel like nowadays it's easier to find. I feel like just because things are open a little more, I think people have a much better grasp on tag team wrestling because it's a little more accepted outside of WWE. And I think AEW has done a great job in like making tag team wrestling appear like it can be the main event of a show, that it can go on last, you know. And just because of that, I feel like there are people who give tag team wrestling a lot more love than it used to have 20 or 30 years ago. And that was probably primarily because WWE was the only game in town, and Vince was always looking for a single star to be working for the World Heavyweight Championship, and that's the guy he was going to focus all his attention on.
Richie asks, "Hey Matt, I loved your cruiserweight championship match with Rey Mysterio on SmackDown in 2003. Was it always planned to be the main event of that show? And how did you feel about being in the cruiserweight division?"
Yes, it was always planned to be the main event of that show, which we'd built up some momentum coming off the WrestleMania matchup where we opened that show. And it was once again, maybe story of my life, story of my career, story of being a pro wrestler in WWE. We lost a lot of time right before we went out there. So we kind of burned through that match as well, but we were still happy with it. And it was a good, exciting pace setter for the opening of WrestleMania as well. But once we got to the deal, and I know we'd specifically waited till Anaheim, so it was the closest location to Rey Mysterio's hometown, and almost against WWE policies, we were going to put over the local guy huge in his hometown, and it was cool because his family was there. And in my mind, anytime I see Dominic on TV, Dominic is kind of froze in my mind at the age he was there. Both of Ray's kid, Dominic and Aaliyah, they both, that's always how I think of them, as young children like that. And I'm sure there's people who know me, they will always think about Maxwell and Wolfie and Barty at the age and size they are now from meeting them and interacting with them. When I was first pitched this cruiserweight title thing, I'd gotten over pretty good as Matt Hardy version 1, the Sensei of Mattitude. And I was originally going to go into a program with Edge. And then there were some political forces. WCW had just came on board that were, I don't think were in my corner. And then I got pushed out of this, and Edge ended up working with A-Train. And Adam at that time had been pushing to work with me in a singles program and elevate me as a singles as well. Obviously we'd been friends coming off all our past rivalries and worked together. So once that was kind of thrown out the window, and I didn't get to work with him, on that Intercontinental US title level. And then they didn't really have anything for me. Then they offered me the cruiserweight thing and the story about, losing weight, whatever. And I think a lot of people would have looked at that and said, "Oh my God, well, I'm being, this is a downgrade."
He's being buried.
You're right. This other thing that he was supposed to do, which could have been cool, he didn't get to do it. So they're going to give him something else. But they're kind of burying him. They're kind of putting him in the cruiserweight division, make him look bad. I was like, shit, yeah, man. I'll try to make that. I can do that as Matt Hardy version 1. I'll try to make it entertaining, and started coming up with other skits. Like Shannon was my trainer, and he was trying to help me drop all the weight, and I was supposed to be almost like a pseudo fake cruiserweight, and then obviously get in there and win the cruiserweight title, and then do something with Ray at WrestleMania. And I think because I embraced it and I said, like, okay, I'm going to own this and I'm going to make it as good as I possibly can. I feel like the initial plan was for me to win the cruiserweight title, but then I was going to go to WrestleMania and probably drop it against Ray, but it started getting over and I was like so into it. And I think Vince could even see how hard I was working for it. That's where they changed that finish. The original finish was Ray was going to beat me at WrestleMania, and they changed that finish so they could drag it out and build it to a bigger match, where Ray could end up winning the title, because like they thought we had some legs to that program. So that was cool. And that was also quite the compliment. So we ended up going all the way to the big match in Anaheim that we did on that television show where Ray ultimately overcame the villain in Matt Hardy version 1 and won the cruiserweight title in front of his family.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you get to say you got to work Rey Mysterio at WrestleMania, that's a pretty cool feather in your cap, I'd have to think.
Yeah. Ray is the best. Ray's the best. Which you just reminded me too. I've got to return his text. I was going to give him some information about where I got my weights for my gym, and I'd almost forgotten to contact him back, being the busy man that I am with all this gaggle of children and all my responsibilities.
Well, he's on the cover of WWE 2K22, so that's pretty cool too. So kudos to him on that. The Anxious Painter says, I suffer from really bad agoraphobia and panic disorders. I've looked up to Matt for decades and had the pleasure to meet him a few times. I would really love his advice on fighting this, taking my daughter Ruby to her first AEW show with a friend in Connecticut and very nervous.
Man, I'm sorry to hear about that. And I'm sorry that you suffer from that condition. That sounds tough and challenging. The biggest thing I can say is that, everybody at some point in their life is going to go through some sort of battle and is going to have to overcome something. Just hang in there, man, and be as tough as you can possibly be. And whatever your doctor says, whatever, the professionals say that is the best for you, I would say go with that, and just try and have confidence and have faith in yourself. that you can do it. Always stay optimistic, always stay positive. I feel like that's the most important thing in life altogether. Whenever you are dealing with a tough scenario, you have to stay positive, you have to stay optimistic, and you have to believe in yourself and believe that you can do it. You are as strong as you believe you are. So I hope you can overcome this. I hope you guys get to come. I hope I get to run into you and meet you. And I hope you guys have the time of your life whenever you come to that AAW show in Connecticut. I guarantee you that all of the AAW crew is going to do everything they can to help entertain you and give you the time of your life. I hope you can enjoy it.
Bridgeport, Connecticut. That is a place I spent a lot of time in college there, covering events at that arena over in Bridgeport. So that should be a fun little show, kind of unique market to hit too. So have a good time at that show. And I totally feel everything Matt said on that front. Eric asks, Matt is surrounded by musicians, the likes of Jeff and Revy. Does he play an instrument, and why does he seem to be drawn to musicians?
Interesting. I didn't really have the case in Jeff. It wasn't that I was drawn to him. I was just kind of stuck with him. I came first, by the way. I'm the oldest.
You did.
And then my wife, she dabbles in everything. She's really a Jill of all trades. I mean, if there's something she wants to do, she'll delve into it and she'll figure it out and she'll make it work and she'll do it incredibly well. I wish I could play an instrument. I feel like it might be too late in the game for me. I have so many other interests in what's going on. And I wish I could sing. I wish I had a good singing voice. I like rapping. I think I'm a half decent rapper, but I enjoy writing lyrics if I do that, so that maybe that is my contribution to the music business. I enjoy writing lyrics. I used to write rap songs all the time. And sometimes I would record things. Maybe a little known Matt fact, not Matt fiction, is in John Cena's first album, which wasn't fully released. I recorded a song with him, which I actually went to the recording studio with him in Boston and did a song where I have a verse in one of John Cena's first songs that he did for his very first album, which was a lot of fun and very cool. So yeah, I think I'm just drawn to these musicians, one because they're my brother and the other because she's my wife. So that would be my answer to that.
We're going to have to pull that up. I did not know that you were involved with Matt on that. That's really cool. I mean, we're involved with John on that rather. I'm distracted because I'm pulling this up here.
Yeah, I don't even know. I'm trying to think if it's posted online somewhere. I do have a copy of it. I'll have to make sure you hear it.
I would love to hear you rap. I bring this up because I work on the indies doing my character, and someone one time brought a sign to show that said Alba still listens to John Cena's CD. That was my big heel heat that I've got. So I've got some Matt Hardy heat too, I guess, if he's in conjunction on that. That's good stuff. Hey, man, I'll teach you how to play guitar. I'll take you. Rob asks, what is your favorite Royal Rumble of all time?
I'm biased in this answer, but I would say my favorite Royal Rumble is the 2003 Royal Rumble, where I had the long in-ring run as Matt Hardy version 1, and my little MF or Mattitude follower, Shannon Moore, was outside the ring, and anytime I would be thrown out of the ring, he would get down on his back or be underneath me trying to press me up either with his legs or his arms or whatever, and he was sacrificing himself to make sure that I didn't get eliminated from that Royal Rumble. And then ultimately at the end, the Beast, Brock Lesnar, is the one who eliminates me with an F5 over the top rope. But that was I really enjoyed my performance. That was one of my favorite Royal Rumbles personally.
It's an underrated Rumble. I like that one a lot.
Yeah. Brock
Lesnar has a thing with being really good in Royal Rumble matches. He just won another one. I don't know if you heard that or not, but he did. So,
oh wow,
that kid might just make it someday. He might. He's got a future there. Caleb asks, who are some of your favorite opponents? Nice, easy question. Straightforward.
Yeah, I would say as a tag team, our favorite tag team opponents that Jeff and I had were Edge and Christian, without a doubt. I would say underneath them would probably be the Bucks of Youth. And maybe, who knows, maybe down the road, now that Jeff is, free from Mick Mahan, maybe we could revisit that one day. I loved working with both Christian and Edge as singles wrestlers. I enjoyed working with Rey Mysterio. He was definitely one of my favorite opponents. I loved the program I had with MVP. We were very great from personality perspective, going back and forth and bantering and volleying. I enjoy wrestling Jeff, now as well. We wrestled when we were younger. There were some times where I feel like we were put in situations that were pretty tough to make work because we were so loved together. But I did enjoy wrestling Jeff as well. And then I enjoyed working with Mark Henry in ECW, as crazy as that sounds too. I really enjoyed Mark. I feel like he was clicking and he got it at that time. I enjoyed working with Mark. He was really easy to work with, being a big man, and working that style, but he would work hard for whoever the guy was he was working against. So there's been a lot of people, but I mean, the guys that stand out, probably first and foremost, that I would say, Edge, Christian, Young Bucks, Rey Mysterio, and my brother.
Very cool. Well, you brought it up, so I'll bring it up. We got this question from like 40 people, so I'm not going to attribute it to anyone. Do you think we could see Jeff Hardy in AEW sometime soon? There's a lot of chatter as we tape this going on about some Forbidden Doors stuff, and this episode drops on Friday, so who's to say how TV plays out? But what's the deal here, Matt? You're a pretty transparent guy. You're doing appearances with Jeff Hardy coming up real soon here at the beginning of March. Do you think we'll be seeing Jeff show up in AEW?
Jeff's no compete clause runs until March 9th. So that's March 9th, 2022. So as of March 10th, he will be free to do whatever. And then he could negotiate with somebody or, work for another big company that has television, whatever it may be. And do I think Jeff Hardy could end up coming to AEW and teaming with Matt Hardy again? As they say in the wrestling business, never say never. Anything's possible. We're definitely going to be working together, and we'll see if the planets align and we do get the opportunity to become the greatest team in all of space and time once more.
It's awesome. And I think it's something that a lot of people would like to see. So I guess we'll find out. Rana asks, can we see soon a second part of your autobiography Exist to Inspire? As the book ended with 2003, a lot of things have happened after that.
Yeah, Ron. I mean, I was just talking about this a couple of nights ago. I've had a couple of people that have kind of reached out about writing another autobiography, and they have as Jeff as well. There's one guy who'd been on Jeff to write his autobiography forever. And I feel like now we actually have content to like write a book. I remember thinking when we wrote a book initially, I was like, God, we were so young and we'd done so little in life. We have pretty amazing stories, like with the whole wrestling, in our backyards on trampolines, and the story that I told last week on, the extreme life of Matt Hardy, the whole Omega story. It's all very intriguing and inspirational in many ways. But now we have truly lived life. We've had like these amazing successes, and we've had these, downs. We've been at peaks and valleys. So there's so much we could write about now, which would really be a book that would be not just juicy, but also I feel like pretty motivational and inspirational. So I have definitely thought about it. And when the time is right, I would definitely write a book again and make sure it is out, probably when it's the best case scenario for like publishing something and being in a spot where I can push it as hard as possible and it will do the best that he can. But yeah, I'm definitely into doing another book, and I will do another book before it's all said and done.
I also feel like this podcast, if I can toot it a little bit, kind of serves as like an avenue for you to tell those stories in even long form. So, and with it being in an archive, it allows for you to do that in one way as well.
It really is. I mean, this is like a great outline of a book for sure, because we talk about things in like long form, and it's very enjoyable. So I feel like if you are listening to this podcast, even on this episode where we're doing, Ask Matt Anything, AMA, I like to give very detailed answers because, as I've said many times, I think the details are very important. I love the details. I love paying close attention to the details. The devil is in the details. So it is. This is a great, fun audiobook in many, many ways.
Yes, absolutely. And you can subscribe to it anywhere you get your podcasts. Leave that 5-star review. He also has another question. This is a good one. When can we see Matt Hardy take more roles in writing scripts and doing creative works, as we're sure that Matt has the creativity and ingenuity to make the industry improve as he did in the past with the Hardy Boys?
That would definitely be a scenario that I would start doing once I'm finished in ring. Once I am no longer a wrestling in ring competitor, I will venture into those areas. As far as coaching or producing, or being a creative guy who kind of helps loan out and helps create these magical ideas to kind of like drive characters and drive feuds and whatnot. So yeah, that would be after my in-ring days are done.
Maybe you can like set a ladder up. It'll be like a cartoon. You'll be able to just seesaw him up in the air, and he'll suspend in air and then come back down.
Well, you could see something up in there, but it ain't gonna mean shit unless you have a good robe on. Maybe a robe made of forks, knives, and spoons, and then you hit that son of a bitch with a boom. I say we should call it the JLT, just like that. I don't even know if I said that. That was what Michael proposed for the Twist of Fate one time. Call it the JLT. Call it just like that.
You gotta incorporate a move into your move set now before your career is over. The JLT.
The JLT, man, maybe so, yeah.
No, but I brought that up because your career, it's so ironic. He was one of your favorites, and there are now so many parallels.
Yeah.
And you one day could follow that path of helping create the next generation of stars like he is. So I just think that's really cool.
It is.
All right. We got one from Matt, and he wants to know, Matt, what's your favorite food? We heard you preferred turkey over ham before, but what's your favorite food in general? I'm saying, Matt, we're going out to a restaurant anywhere you want. Your birthday, happy birthday. What do you want?
Hello, Matt with two T's. Well, it always kind of depends. A lot of times my food and what I am currently eating kind of depends on my diet at that time. And right now, being that I'm trying to get back into a real strict diet and an eating plan and like fasting at night, which is tough, which I really enjoy eating. I love eating. There's so many great things out there. Right now, currently, I would say my favorite things would be like spicy tuna poke bowls.
Oh, the best.
That stands out to me.
The best.
You can't beat that. I love like, and my wife makes these. This is a Rebbe Hardy specialty, like chicken lettuce wraps with tofu in them, where she'll put like this nice barbecue sauce on the chicken. That is so good. And I feel like rice is probably my go-to thing. And I'm also a big grilled seafood guy too. I like that a lot now. Like grilled scallops or blackened shrimp, whatever it may be, and a nice fish. That stuff is so great. Because I've tried to cut back too on also like just my red meat in general, just because that stuff is a lot harder to digest. And I just did a video that I posted a couple of days ago on my social media saying that, I really am going to bust my ass and do everything I can to get in the optimal shape that I can, at this stage of the game, considering my age and, how full my bump cards, plural, are. I really am. I'm going to work as hard as I can, because this AHFO story, like, I don't know, we haven't found success in it, the first couple of weeks, and my motivation, whether you look at this from the story or not the story, really doesn't make a difference. I want to do something in AEW that is going to be successful, and I want to be hot and get heated up again. And it's one of those things. I understand there's peaks and valleys. You don't stay over all the time. Most people don't. There's a rare occasion here and there, but most times, it's a cosine curve. You're up and then you're down. You're up and then you're down. So I'm ready to heat back up again and get into a hot scenario. And even asking about these foods that I'm eating a little healthier. I really am going all in, committing myself, trying to sleep the right amount and train the right amount, update my training where there's a lot more yoga driven stuff in it and like lightweight stuff, because I just need to be as athletic and hopefully improve my flexibility as much as possible.
Not to mention, you're working with a guy like Andrade right now, who is one of the best in-ring talents in the world, who is in incredible shape. Outstanding suit game, by the way. Need to put that over. Andrade's suit game is unbelievable. And that's some high expectations to be living up to, Matt, having to work with a guy like that. So you do got to be in great shape.
It's tricky, especially in pro wrestling. I mean, they made this joke over and over when I was young, saying, "Oh, well, it's a young man's game." but once I'm working with guys that, a lot of these guys I work with are 20 years younger than I am, and then when you think about all I put my body through, like, it's still, I want to bust my ass and work as hard so I can still work on the highest level with these guys, like on their same level, so that's a challenge, but, I'm all about challenges. I love working hard to not only accept challenges, but to win these challenges.
So we got a few more questions here. I don't want you to go too in-depth on this question because we are doing a whole series on the broken character, but I'd like to give a little teaser perhaps with it. Top Guy Michael asks, what was more challenging, initially creating the broken universe or developing it in such a way that the storylines could evolve and develop?
Creating the broken universe for me, that wasn't hard at all. It was easy. I mean, I would say probably, in all honesty, without going too deep into this, the most challenging part of it for me, and also Jeremy Borash at the same time, was just getting too outrageous, too out of the parameters of pro wrestling, especially typical pro wrestling, because I would have loved to have turned all the fucking all the broken universe stuff into like a TV series, a TV show. It would have been over the top, where it would have been taken out of context as far as being like a sports environment. I would have went far above that. So that would probably be, that was the greatest challenge. Probably trying to stay within classic pro wrestling storylines.
You have a lot of like Adult Swim influence going on there and all that kind of stuff, because I feel like there's some non sequitur and that type.
Yeah, it's something along the lines of Adult Swim. I've never watched it deeply, but as you know, Salad Fingers was a big inspiration for the broken Matt Hardy stuff. True Blood, the idea, that vampires are immortal and live forever, and they live through different time periods. That there was a lot of inspiration there, and something I'm going to do whenever we actually do this in long form. I'm going to give the history about how I created and connected with the seven deities and the story behind that. That's something I've never shared.
Okay.
Ever.
Looking forward to hearing it. Kevin says, because I was a huge fan of the Hardy show and still have all the seasons on DVD, my question is, do you still have a shot here and there of the goose, referring to Grey Goose?
Yeah, I'm not really a drinker nowadays, but those were fun times with the goose. And if I'm not mistaken, I feel like I looked over these questions and somebody asked about the Traveler's Lodge. If you have that question there as well, I almost combined these into one answer.
Yes, I can do
we
that.
had
when is the last time you clubbed someone, and where can you still get the club from? I've been a huge fan since the beginning of the Hardy Show webcast.
So to you, John, and everyone else out there that is listening to this currently, basically we had a bit on the Hardy Show that had started where someone had a party. It was this guy named Jimbo who actually did a gimmick. I think his name was Dick Foley, when he was like a Mick Foley cosplayer, so to say. I think Mick was hot about him too. He was mad he was doing this gimmick. But like this guy had a little party, and he had some vodka there at the time, and it was Traveler's Lodge, and it was like the super bottom shelf, the cheapest vodka you could possibly get. And then like we did a deal where we'd have this flask and we would fill it up with this Traveler's Lodge, this cheap ass vodka, and we go, here you go, man, here you go, have a shot of this Grey Goose, and once they would drink it, and if they would say, oh my God, it's so good, thank you so much for giving me a shot of the Grey Goose, you were clubbed, because they were obviously trolled, like they thought it was this good, high quality, top shelf vodka, but it was this bullshit Traveler's Lodge vodka. And that became a bit, and then like someone would have to call it out, like that it wasn't Grey Goose, and then if they would, then they actually got a shot of Grey Goose. It was like an ongoing bit we had on the Hardy Show at one point. So yeah, I haven't done that in a while. I haven't really been involved in any of these juvenile pranks. Well, I got to take that back too. But the last couple of days, my kids and wife are running around wearing Huggy Wuggy costumes, trying to prank one another and scare each other with dolls and costumes.
Dude, your kids are ribbers, man. I saw on Rebby's TikTok, which everyone should go check out, Maxwell pulling a hot one on Wolfgang with a doll or something like that. He was not about it.
Yeah, it was a Huggy Wuggy. Like I didn't know him until now, but now he's okay. Yeah, Huggy Wuggy is involved in my everyday life now at some point.
That's awesome. By the way, the traveler's question came from Lindsay as well. She's one of
Yeah.
the Ad Free Show's faithful. Very great stuff there from her.
Thank you, Lindsay.
Let's see here. Like I said, I got a couple more for you. Kevin also asks, what is your favorite match you've competed in that didn't involve tables, ladders, or chairs?
That's a good question. One of the first things that stands out, but I feel like it's not a fair answer, is the cage match against Edge, because I love that match, especially from a storytelling aspect. But it did have a chair involved in it.
Straight up wrestling match.
Yeah. That's what I'm gonna do. I just gave you my initial gut reaction. I think straight up wrestling match, probably it wasn't the greatest match that we've ever had, but just a match where Matt and Jeff Hardy beat the APA in Fayetteville, North Carolina for the World Tag Team titles. It was a shorter match, but it was a kick-ass, little explosive, short, fun match. It was just a big deal to us because that was our dream. That's why we got into this whole insanity in the first place, to become the World Tag Team champions and be the greatest team in the world, just one time. And if we could do it one time, all our dreams were done. We'd achieved everything we wanted to do. And obviously we got to do that multiple times over. So that is very cool. But that is the match I would go with, because that was just a big deal for us. Winning the tag team titles, being WWE World Tag Team champions, especially beating a powerhouse team like the APA, that was a big deal to us.
And you didn't even need forks, knives, or spoons to get it done. How about that?
Just a cane.
Well, that was a pretty big match for you guys. Ben asked, was there a time in your career where you felt scared or anxious before a big match? And how do you deal with those kinds of feelings?
I think that is something that happens if you know you have a big match coming up. There's a lot of content in it. There's probably some risky things you're doing, or there's some stuff you're worried if you're going to pull off or not. I feel like that's kind of where the pressure and the nerves come from, which it's a good thing too. I think it's a healthy thing, because it is motivational. And I think it's good to feel that way and still be nervous. That means that you love what you're doing and you want to do it as good as you possibly can. So some of the matches, for sure, like those big WrestleMania matches, were very stressful. If you're having a match where you have like a lot of content and you're worried some of the stuff might be hard to pull off, I feel like that's kind of when it happens, or if you're just on such in such a high profile match that, so many people are going to be watching, and you just want to be obviously at your very best. You wanted it to go practically perfect. Those are the times I feel like you get the most nervous. And sometimes having those nerves, having that stomach, the tingle of the stomach, sometimes it's a positive thing. It's a good motivator.
Got three more here for you, Matt. And again, if you didn't get your question read this week, we're going to do more episodes of this in the future. And every single week here on the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy, we take questions from you guys on the topic at hand. So don't be afraid to send us your tweets, #AskMatt, @MattHardyPod, @MattHardyBrand, and @Jon Alba. We will get them in. I promise you that. And we did
just keep them coming.
Absolutely. Keep them coming. We'll go back into the archive, get some. Carl asks, have you ever met an athlete or actor or actress that never stepped in the ring that you think might make a great wrestler? We're seeing Johnny Knoxville right now in WWE. He's got something cooking with Sami Zayn. Sami Zayn takes, in my opinion, I don't know, I've never spoken to him about this, but there's some clear Matt Hardy character work influence in Sami Zayn's game. He's doing great work. He's going to do something with Johnny Knoxville. Are there any celebrities or actors, actresses that you think might make that transition?
Gosh,
or be good at it?
Do you know who's in my mind, just to begin with? And it's not really a fair answer because they have wrestled, but Stephen Amell, I think if he decided to wrestle, I think he would be great. I mean, because not only is he built well and athletic, but he actually likes pro wrestling. And that's usually when the best pro wrestlers are people who are fans in the beginning, because, they know it and they understand it and kind of get how it works. And it's so cool. I've got to actually get to know him, get to talk to him, have conversations with him at a few Comic-Cons, especially in the last couple of years. And it was so funny how a couple of his matches, he said, like his wife has said, like, oh, you can't wrestle again. That's it. And I get that, because there is such a level of danger to it being a pro wrestler. It's not like, you're acting and doing a show and then, you have a stuntman that can kind of come in and do the dangerous gig. We are stuntmen in athletic contests that are also performers, and we're doing theater. There's a whole lot of stuff going on in a pro wrestling match. There's so many different forms of entertainment that connect in one juncture. But Stephen Amell, I think, as far as a straight up actor who's like a legit great actor, I think he would be amazing as a pro wrestler as well.
I'm looking it up right now because I'm trying to see if you were there when this happened. I don't think you were, but did you catch any of the D'Angelo Williams stuff in TNA when they brought him in, the former NFL running back?
Yeah, that's right. He was
He was
really good too.
outstanding.
Yeah. No, he was. I do remember that. And I
Mhm.
guess I didn't think about him because the specific question said actor.
Yeah.
But like, no, he was great. And also he was a fan too. You could tell from his performance that people who aren't fans, they kind of like just don't know how wrestling goes. And someone who is a fan, you can tell like if they're doing something, they kind of envision in their mind how they see it happening because they've seen it before in the past, in some way, so that's very beneficial to those people. And if you're training someone from the jump, like if they know wrestling and they're a fan of wrestling, they are much easier to train than someone who's never seen pro wrestling in their life.
Were you there when, I mean, you were there, but like, were you there when Kevin Federline did his program with John Cena back in the day?
I was there, yeah.
Any recollections of that? Anything that you can share with us on that? Because for those who don't remember, Kevin Federline was Britney Spears's ex-husband, who, this is like peak 2006 pop culture. He is like huge, big time celebrity. And he comes in and works a match on New Year's Day with John Cena. Pretty incredible. Most people would kill for a spot like that. Kevin Federline got it. You have any recollections of that?
I just remember when he was there, he was one of the celebrities who were just kind of like, tucked away in their own dressing room and just kind of like doing his own thing. A lot of times it would be cool, like when we would go to like the LA markets, or markets where some celebrities might live and they would come out. Like for instance, Jack Perry, Jungle Boy's dad, Luke Perry, he would be there comment. And it's funny, like Christian and I, we've joked about how, he would talk to us and he was like a fan. And obviously, he would, support his son being a pro wrestler and the whole PWG deal, whatnot. Guys like that who are fans, who come and they interact with the guys and kind of like want to like meet some of the guys that they see on TV and like see what they're like and kind of see what it's like behind the scenes. I feel like those guys are a lot more interesting. I feel like Kevin Federline, he was there strictly to do promotion. That, he was in there, he was doing his gig, but he was just strictly to do promotion. He didn't care about the wrestling aspect at all.
Main evented Raw against John Cena. There are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of wrestlers who would kill for that opportunity, but he got to do it. We got a question from Maddie P. Will we ever get a version of Surge in AEW? It's funny, when I brought up the high voltage stuff with WWE last week and how you could have taken advantage of that, people were like, oh my God, I never thought of that. Could we ever see Surge show up in AEW?
I feel like the closest you're going to get to seeing Surge in AEW was whenever I teamed up with the Young Bucks and we wrestled against Private Party and Joey Janela on a Dynamite. It was the Dynamite after the first ever Stadium Stampede. And I actually was rocking like the Surge outfit with the headband and the wristbands and the tights. That's probably the closest you're going to get to seeing Surge in a pair of tights, Matt Hardy in a pair of tights on Dynamite now.
I'm sure the Young Bucks probably love that. They probably thought that was the coolest thing.
Yeah, they did. I'm pretty sure that them being good friends with those guys, they were the ones who were like, hey, let us team up with Matt. We'll do this with Matt. And I remember pitching that idea. I said, I don't know, man. Now that's kind of when I was going to try and establish, just the switching of persona character deal, which, was maybe a little too convoluted for the AEW wrestling audience. It was too convoluted for the AEW wrestling audience. But just doing that with them, they were like down for it. And it was a lot of fun. I know they enjoyed it. We had a great time out there.
Well, here's our last question. It comes to us from Chris, and you talk about segues and transitions. This segues perfectly to next week's episode about Big Money Matt. How do you feel about your current run in AEW? Do you feel that you've created a memorable character that is over with the AEW fan base, or do you want to switch and try something new?
That is a good question. I feel that after I stop doing Big Money Matt and I go in a different direction, people will look back at this work that I've done with a greater love and respect for it. I feel like much like a lot of stuff in current times, people just don't give it the love, while it's active and current, and they wait till like it's dead and gone until they really praise something. So I think people will look back at this and they will understand. It's like, I'm in a position now where I think if it would have stuck with myself and Private Party, we would have been a lot more effective together. Once we added Butcher and Blade, and then, TH2 and Georgia, it became watered down a little bit, obviously. But my job was to help those guys and like kind of teach them and train them. And I did, even if that doesn't always come off on TV, and maybe their push doesn't represent it. Like later on down the line, I know I've done things, especially for Private Party and Butcher and Blade, that have helped build them confidence and help them grow as performers. And that's very important to me. And I take a lot of pride in that as well. So I think Big Money Matt has been pretty entertaining for Hill. And like, sometimes when people are mad at me and don't like me, I mean, my job isn't for you to like me right now. It's for me to like get under your skin and piss you off, and eventually have an Orange Cassidy whip my ass, or whoever it may be, a Darby Allin, whatever. So I have enjoyed it. And I think once we segue out of this into something different, I think people will look back at it and say it was a lot better than they do currently now. So I'm pretty happy with what I'm doing, especially because it makes my appearances in the ring seem more special. And it also allows me to really truly mentor some younger guys that should have great futures in pro wrestling.
Next week, we'll take a deeper dive into the Big Money Matt character, the Italian Stallion, a name you've heard on this podcast many times, and the stories behind that. You've given me some previews of them. They sound really great and almost insane to believe that these things actually happened in real life. And the wee fee was a little more than a wee fee, in fact, that you had to fork over. So we'll get into that.
It was a large charge.
A large charge. And that is Matt Fact. We'll be talking about that next week here on The Extreme Life of Matt Hardy. Really good stuff. Matt, I just launched the Wives of Wrestling podcast here on Podcast Heat. And the two ladies, Giovanna Engel and Kim Warden, have had nothing but great things to say about your lovely wife, Rebby, and how excited they are to eventually get her to come on that podcast. What's the latest with what Rebby's got cooking on the Twitch stream this week? We're getting some pranks that the House Hardy is pulling off here.
Yeah. There's always something going on here at the Hardy compound. Twitch.tv/House Hardy. We're going to be having a stream every Monday. It's Mattitude Monday. It's where I interact with people who are subscribers to our Twitch stream, and I'll play different varying games with them. A lot of times if I play Among Us, my kids, Maxo and Wolfie, sometimes they'll serve as my player as well. They're a little better at those games than I am, but it's always fun. We always have some interesting conversation. A lot of times just currently whatever is happening in the life of House Hardy, whatever is going on with the Hardy family is usually what we talk about, that, and sometimes pop culture stuff. And there's always some super entertaining stuff with the kids as far as their most recent pranks, and kids just say the most amazing things. So there's so many conversations that just like segue out of crazy things that the kids have been doing with one another. So it's a lot of fun, and we really enjoy it. And it's built like a great base of fans that come in and they really feel like family, because it's like a less toxic area of social media, because only a certain amount of people that really want to be there are there.
And if you were to get Danhausen to come down to the Hardy compound, as you've talked about, it would in theory become the Househausen, would it not?
Yes. House Hardyhausen, right?
House Hardyhausen.
Danhausen would definitely make a fun and entertaining opponent or partner with Broken Matt Hardy. I can say that for sure. They would make some super entertaining content together.
100% on that one, my friend. This has been a fun episode. Really appreciate everybody sending in those questions. One of the things I love about doing this podcast is Matt is so real and honest and transparent, and I think you got all that with your questions here today. We'll have a fun one next week. I'm hoping I'll be seeing you this week, Matt. It'll be a lot of fun on that front. And yeah, man, we'll be back with Big Money Matt next week. Anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to say thanks to everyone that has been checking out The Extreme Life of Matt Hardy. And I truly hope you do enjoy this, because I'm always going to go out of my way to try and be as open and as honest and transparent as possible. And I just get where the pro wrestling business is in this day and age. You know, it's much more open than it has ever been. And I feel like being able to speak, you know, like this to you and give you a little bit of the behind the scenes info and tell you some stories that you haven't heard. I think it's extremely interesting. And sometimes the behind the scenes stuff is almost more interesting than the actual stuff that happens in front of the camera. So for everyone that is here and has checked it out and enjoyed it, thank you so much. Please continue to join us every single week whenever we come out with a new podcast. And also, please rate us and leave a comment. Those things do a lot, and we appreciate that. It helps build us, and we want to, you know, continue to build our brand of the extreme life of Matt Hardy, so we can continue to reach more and more wrestling fans.
The words have been spoken. We'll see you next week here on the extreme life of Matt Hardy.
Deletion!